You ever try to smile in a room that's laughing at you? Not the loud kind of laugh. Not the kind that echoes. I'm talking about the quiet, tight-lipped smirks. The glances that flick between people like they're passing around a secret you were meant to hear. That was me, last Sunday, standing in my cousin Danielle's sun-drenched living room, holding a gift bag with torn handles and a handmade photo frame inside. My daughter, Ava, clutched my side with both hands, her little face tilted up at me like she was searching for a sign, any sign, that we belonged here. We didn't. Not really. Danielle throws a Mother's Day brunch every year. She calls it a celebration of queens, but the only crowns in sight are on overpriced mimosa glasses and pastel cakes that probably cost more than my rent. I come because I want Ava to feel part of something, family, tradition, whatever. But walking into that house always feels like stepping onto a stage where you forgot your lines and everyone else is in costume. I brought a frame Ava and I made together, popsicle sticks painted gold, with little paper roses glued to the corners. Inside, a photo of me and her from last winter, cheeks pink from the cold, Ava mid-laugh with hot chocolate in hand. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Danielle's kids were already tearing into gifts when we arrived. Perfume sets, gift cards, spa packages in neatly wrapped boxes. Their shrieks of delight filled the room as I nudged Ava toward the couch. She held the frame tight in both hands, careful not to smudge the glass. Danielle appeared, draped in a lavender silk robe, like she'd floated out of a magazine ad. "Oh, hey," she said, blinking like she hadn't expected us. "Glad you made it." Her eyes dropped to the bag in Ava's hands. "Is that from you too?" Ava nodded, grinning. Danielle took the bag, peered inside, and paused just long enough for it to sting. Then she pulled the frame out, turned it toward the light, and gave the kind of smile people give when they're pretending to like a fruitcake. "Well, isn't this sweet?" she said. "Did you make this at school, Ava?" Ava looked confused.
No.
"I made it with Mommy." I could see Danielle trying to backtrack, the way her mouth twitched like she might take it back, but instead, she placed the frame on the coffee table, face down. Face down. And maybe that shouldn't have mattered. Maybe I should have brushed it off. But I saw Ava's expression falter, just for a second. Her smile didn't vanish, it froze, like a still image. Her eyes dropped to the floor, and she folded her hands in her lap, small and still. I sat beside her, biting the inside of my cheek, trying to pretend I didn't see it. That I didn't hear Danielle's friend whisper behind her champagne flute. "That's gotta be from the dollar store." The thing is, it wasn't.
We didn't buy it.
We built it. Late at night after my shift at the diner, at the kitchen table while the smell of pancakes from dinner still lingered in the air. Ava had picked out every color, every flower, every glitter sticker. We laughed as the glue got stuck to our fingers. She told me it was going to be the most beautiful gift ever because it was made from love, not money. And now it sat upside down on a table we weren't allowed to put our drinks on. I reached over and squeezed Ava's hand. She didn't look up. She just leaned into me quiet. I whispered, "I love you. And that frame is beautiful." She didn't answer, but I saw her nod once, tiny and slow. We stayed for another hour. Ate quiche with names I couldn't pronounce. Listened to a speech Danielle gave about elevating womanhood, while her friend live-streamed the whole thing. Ava never left my side. She didn't ask for cake. She didn't even ask to see the other kids. She just stayed next to me, her fingers curled around the hem of my dress. When we finally left, the air outside felt like freedom. I bent down to zip up Ava's jacket and asked, "You okay?" She nodded, but didn't smile. Then she said, "Do you think it broke because she didn't hold it right?" I blinked. "What?" "The frame. It was kinda bent after she picked it up. Do you think it broke because she didn't hold it gently?" And I swear that cracked something open in me. Because I realized she wasn't asking about the frame. She was asking about us. I wrapped my arms around her and held her close, whispering, "Nothing's broken, baby. Not really. Not the stuff that matters." But that night, after Ava was asleep, I pulled the frame from my tote bag. Yes, I'd taken it back when no one was looking. And sure enough, one of the paper roses had fallen off. The corner was bent. The glass had a tiny crack running through it like a secret trying to escape. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at it for a long time. Then I picked up my glue gun and fixed the rows. Because some things are worth putting back together, even if no one else sees the value in them but you. Before we continue, take a moment to let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to more powerful stories like this one. I didn't sleep much that night. After I fixed the flower on the frame, I left it on the windowsill in the kitchen, where the first light of morning could touch it. There was something poetic in that, something Ava would understand.
She's like that.
Always noticing little things others miss, like the way light dances on glass, or how a voice changes when someone stops pretending to be polite. When I woke up, she was already in the kitchen, her chin resting on her crossed arms, staring at the frame like it might start glowing. "Morning," I said, groggy, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. She turned toward me, smiling softly. "It looks better now." I nodded.
Yeah.
Still bent in the corner, though. She leaned back in her chair and said, "Matter of fact, that's okay. It just means it's been through something." I stopped in my tracks. There's no way an 8-year-old should understand life like that. But Ava always has. She feels the world more than she touches it. She carries invisible things on her shoulders like they were made for her size. That day, we didn't talk about Danielle or the brunch. I didn't bring it up, and neither did she. I packed her lunch. She braided her own hair. We walked to school, and she held my hand the entire way, swinging our arms gently, like she was setting the rhythm for the world to follow. I watched her walk through the school doors and thought about what kind of world I was giving her. One where people like Danielle defined worth by packaging. One where handmade wasn't good enough. Where enough always felt just out of reach. I went to work after that, Dee's Diner, where I serve coffee to half-away construction workers and retired teachers who tip in dimes and kindness. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. That day, Mrs. Langley, one of our regulars, noticed I was off. "You look like you've been chewed up and spit out, sweet pea," she said, sliding her mug toward me. "That cousin of yours still putting on shows?" I smiled. I'd told her bits and pieces over the years. She hosted another performance this weekend. Ava and I brought a gift that didn't match the wallpaper. Mrs. Langley snorted. That woman wouldn't recognize love if it came wrapped in Chanel and sang her name. I chuckled, but the laugh didn't reach my stomach. Ava asked me if the frame broke because it wasn't held gently. That made her go still. Then she reached across the counter, her hand soft but firm on mine. "Tell her no. It broke because the world sometimes forgets how to hold precious things. But that's not her fault. Or yours." I nodded, but something in me still wrestled with the weight of it all. That evening, after dinner, Ava came into the living room dragging a shoebox. "What's this?" I asked, drying the last dish.
She grinned.
"My collection." Inside were scraps of paper, ticket stubs, pieces of ribbon, tiny pebbles, drawings on napkins. It looked like clutter until you knew Ava. "This one," she said, picking up a wrinkled blue ribbon, "is from the park that day you pushed me on the swing for an hour straight." She pulled out a folded piece of paper with a greasy smudge on it. This was the napkin from when we had surprise cheeseburgers in the car after the dentist. Item by item, memory by memory, she brought me back to all the small, invisible things we'd built together. Things no one else would ever clap for or post about, but that made up the core of our lives. Then she reached the bottom of the box and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. "Open it," she said shyly. I peeled it back slowly. Inside was a small wooden heart, the kind you'd find at a craft store, painted with gold swirls and little pink stars. In the middle, written in pencil, were the words, "Mom, the only real queen I know." I stared at it, blinking fast. "Ava." She sat cross-legged, hands in her lap. "I was going to give it to you at the brunch, but I changed my mind."
Why?
"Because they wouldn't get it." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I did a bit of both. "You were right," I told her, pulling her into my lap. "They wouldn't have." She rested her head on my chest. "Can I still give it to you now?" You just did, I whispered. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I added the heart to the wall above our couch, right next to the fixed frame. I stepped back and looked at them both, shining gently in the glow of our mismatched string lights. That wall didn't look like much to most people, but to me, it was a throne. Not made of gold or silk or marble, but of sacrifice, paint, paper, glue, and a little girl who knew what real royalty looked like. And tomorrow, everything would start changing. Not because we needed revenge, but because love, when seen clearly, is contagious. And someone else, someone unexpected, was about to catch it. 2 days later, I was running late for the evening shift. Ava had forgotten her math workbook. I had to iron her uniform blouse, and our hot water heater had picked the worst possible morning to go on strike. I was halfway out the door when I heard my phone buzz, 3 times in quick succession. I glanced down, expecting a message from Dee about my shift schedule. But it wasn't her. It was Danielle. I blinked at the name on the screen. We hadn't spoken since the brunch. Not directly. Not since she'd placed Ava's handmade gift face down like it was some accidental burden. Her message was short.
Hey.
Can you call me when you get a chance? It's about Ava. My stomach dropped. I scanned the message again, trying to decode it. It's about Ava? What could that mean? My first instinct was panic. Did something happen at school? Was Danielle just trying to start something? Or was this another veiled judgment disguised as concern? I didn't respond right away. I dropped Ava at school, clocked in at Dee's, poured coffee until my wrist ached, and all day, that message sat heavy in the back of my mind like an unopened envelope I was scared to read. It wasn't until my dinner break, sitting in the alley behind the diner with a sandwich half-eaten in my lap, that I finally called her. She answered on the second ring. Hello. Hey, I said, cautious. It's me. You said something about Ava? There was a pause. Not long, but long enough to hear the sound of her exhale.
Yeah, she said.
Okay, so? Leah told me something. Leah, Danielle's daughter. The same one glued to her phone during the brunch. I waited. She said Ava told her some things at school. About how she was saving up to buy you something for Mother's Day. That she didn't eat lunch some days, so she could save the money. I froze. She told Leah, Danielle continued, that she wanted to buy you a real frame. One that would look good in fancy houses. I closed my eyes. Danielle's voice softened. I thought it was just a story, but Leah said she saw Ava give lunch money to a teacher and ask if she could trade it for coins. And then she trailed off. What? And then, she whispered, Leah gave her her own lunch money. Said she wanted to help. I nearly dropped the phone. Danielle's voice broke, just slightly. She told me all this last night. Said Ava didn't want me to know because she was afraid I'd laugh at her again. The silence that followed was the kind that makes your bones ache. I didn't know, I swear, Danielle said. I didn't know she was going without to make me feel small. She wasn't doing it for you, I said, my voice quiet but steady. She was doing it for me, because that's who she is. Another long pause. Then, I still have the frame. The one she gave me. It's been sitting on my vanity, turned upside down like an idiot mistake. But this morning I flipped it over and really looked at it. And it's beautiful. Not just in a sentimental way. It's actually beautiful. I didn't say anything. Danielle let out a breath. I don't expect you to believe I've changed overnight. I haven't. But I think maybe Leah has. And maybe Ava changed her. Another silence. But this one felt different. Then Danielle asked almost nervously, Can I make it right? Why? Because she's a better person than I've been, Danielle said. And maybe I need to be someone who deserves to know her. That caught me off guard. For a second, I thought about Ava's collection box. The things she considered treasure. I wondered if Danielle could ever understand the value in them. The deep, invisible thread that connected those scraps to something sacred. I said carefully, You don't make it right with words. I know, she said quickly. That's why I dropped something off at Ava's school today. My spine straightened. You what? Just a gift. For her. Something she can give to you if she wants. It's in her cubby. I didn't write my name. I didn't want her to feel pressure. But it's there. I left a note, too. I just signed it, "A friend who sees you."
I didn't know what to say.
When I picked Ava up that afternoon, she didn't mention it. She climbed into the car like any other day, chattering about how her class caterpillar had finally turned into a chrysalis. I waited, thinking she'd bring it up. But she didn't. That night, while she brushed her teeth, I peeked into her backpack. Tucked inside, wrapped in soft lilac tissue, was a leather-bound photo album. Hand-stitched. Elegant. Not flashy. Just quietly beautiful. On top, a sticky note. For your memories. For the ones you're still making. You're already someone worth framing. A friend who sees you. I put it back exactly as I found it. The next morning, Ava placed the photo album next to the handmade frame on the wall. Not instead of.
Next to.
Like she understood exactly what it meant. Because Ava doesn't hold grudges. She holds space. And in doing so, she made room for something I hadn't dared hope for.
Growth.
Forgiveness. Maybe even redemption. It started with the frame, then the heart, then the photo album. By the end of that week, our living room wall had transformed. Ava called it the story wall. And she took it more seriously than I expected. Every day after school, she'd come home, change into her comfy socks, and add something new, a tiny watercolor, a dried daisy, even a post-it where she wrote, "Today I made Leia laugh so hard, she dropped her pudding cup." It wasn't just decoration. It was a declaration. Proof that the life we lived, the simple, quiet, honest life, mattered. That love wasn't some grand, curated performance like Danielle's parties. It was a collection of little moments, taped to drywall with dollar store adhesive and stubborn joy. The surprising thing? People started noticing. It began with Mrs. Langley. She came over one Saturday with a half-eaten pie and her knitting bag, just to sit a while, she said. Ava offered her a seat, then proudly pointed to the wall. "That's our collection of happy." Mrs. Langley, not one for dramatics, put on her glasses, walked up to the wall, and studied it like it was a gallery piece. "Well," she said, "I've seen a lot of things in my 82 years. But this is love in real time." Ava beamed. Later, it was Dee. She stopped by after her shift with a container of leftover hash brown casserole. She saw the wall and didn't say anything at first, just stood there, reading every note, tracing her fingers over the edge of Ava's homemade calendar filled with hand-drawn stars and hearts. "You should write a book," she said eventually. "Call it How to Raise a Giant in a Tiny Apartment." I laughed. But part of me wondered if she was right. Because Ava was becoming something quietly monumental. Not in the way the world usually notices. There were no ribbons, no newspaper clippings. Just a girl who made people remember what goodness looked like. And people were starting to follow her lead. That Monday at school, Ava came home with a folded piece of lined paper, no name on the outside. Inside was a crayon drawing of a bird with a broken wing and a band-aid on it with the caption, "It's still flying. Like you." She pinned it to the wall, right next to the sticky note from "A friend who sees you." I stared at it for a long time. "Ava," I said, "who gave you this?" She shrugged. "Someone left it in my cubby. I think it was Miles. He doesn't talk much, but he likes birds." Miles. The shy boy who always walked 10 feet behind the rest of the class during pickup. I'd barely heard his voice in a year. But somehow, he had found something in Ava that made him want to speak. If not with words, then with pictures. She was changing people. Quietly, gently, without even realizing it. By the end of the week, there were 7 new additions to the story wall. Some anonymous, some with initials. One was a paper chain with "Thank you" written on each link. Another was a paper crane made from math homework. Ava didn't ask why. She didn't ask who. She just smiled and made room. One night, as we curled up on the couch with mugs of tea, I asked her, "Do you know why they're giving you all these things?" She looked at me, brows furrowed like I was the one missing something obvious. "Because people want to be seen, Mommy. When they feel seen, they do nice things back." That was Ava. 8 years old, and already speaking in truths it takes most people decades to grasp. I looked around our tiny living room. The peeling paint, the second-hand couch, the dented coffee table we'd rescued from the alley. And it hit me, we didn't live in lack. We lived in abundance. Because love, when it's real, multiplies. It reaches. It teaches. It shifts rooms and straightens spines and mends invisible wounds with glitter glue and lined paper. That weekend, Danielle called again. This time, her voice sounded different. Not nervous, not performative, just real. I was wondering, she said, if you and Ava might come over next Saturday. Not for a party. Just dinner. Just us. I hesitated. I'm not trying to make up for anything, she added quickly. Leia hasn't stopped talking about Ava. She wrote a poem about her. Put it on the fridge. It starts with, she doesn't need to be the loudest to be the strongest. My heart clenched. Dinner sounds nice, I said. But only if we get to bring dessert. Danielle laughed.
Deal.
But only if it's Ava's brownies. We hung up, and I sat there holding the phone, stunned. Not because Danielle had invited us over, but because for the first time in years I didn't feel like we were being tolerated. We were being welcomed, not because we changed who we were, but because the world was finally starting to see who Ava had always been. The last time I walked into Danielle's house, I left holding a frame like a bruised memory. This time, I held a casserole dish and Ava's hand. Danielle had texted us the address even though I already knew it, as if this was a different house, a different version of her, a cleaner slate.
And in a way, it was.
The driveway was the same. The flower beds perfectly trimmed. The wreath on the door said, "Welcome," though it still felt more decorative than genuine. But when the door opened, the difference wasn't in the house. It was in her face. Danielle smiled, not with the curated politeness of a hostess, but with something softer, unrehearsed. Like maybe, for once, she wasn't trying to be impressive, just present. "Ava," she said gently, "I'm so glad you came." Ava smiled, shy but warm. "We brought brownies." "Then this is already the best night ever," Danielle replied. Leia appeared from behind her, holding a stack of napkins and practically bouncing. "We made name cards for the table," she said. "Yours has glitter on it, Ava." Ava beamed. "I love glitter." As they disappeared into the dining room together, I followed Danielle into the kitchen. The room smelled of rosemary, lemon, and something warm. She motioned for me to set the dish down, and for a moment, we just stood in the soft hum of the oven. "I was nervous," she admitted. "About what?" She turned to face me, eyes uncertain. "That you'd say no. That Ava wouldn't come. That I'd already done too much damage." I looked at her carefully. "You did hurt her. You hurt us." She nodded. "I know. And I can't undo it. But I see it now. I see you now." That part hit harder than I expected. Because I wasn't used to being seen. Not like that. Not beyond the paycheck, the work apron, the tired eyes, and thrift store shoes. I'd gotten good at shrinking myself, so Ava could shine. But Danielle was looking at me like I was standing full-sized for the first time in years. "I don't want to pretend it didn't happen," she added. "But I do want to make sure it never happens again." I didn't have a scripted answer for that. So I just nodded, once. And that was enough. The dining room was set like a magazine spread, but it felt less stiff this time. No champagne flutes. No showy centerpieces. Just a vase of daisies and hand-drawn place cards, each one a little imperfect, which made them feel just right. Ava's had her name spelled in purple glitter glue with a sticker of a smiling sun. Mine just said, "Mom," in Leia's handwriting, with a heart drawn beside it. When we sat down, Leia leaned toward Ava and whispered something that made them both laugh. The sound, light and real, cut through something inside me I didn't realize had been clenched. Over dinner, the girls talked about school, books, favorite desserts. At one point, Leia asked Ava, "Can I make a story wall like yours?" Ava blinked, surprised. "You want to?" Leia nodded.
Yeah.
"I think mine would start with this dinner." Danielle looked at me, And for the first time in forever, I saw something in her face that wasn't envy or judgment or superiority. I saw regret. And behind that, respect. After dessert, Ava and Leia disappeared into the living room, giggling over a shared sketchbook. Danielle and I stayed behind, clearing plates, stacking leftovers, moving in a kind of silence that holds meaning instead of distance. She dried the last plate, then said, "I was wrong, about everything." I stayed quiet, letting her sit in the weight of it. She placed the plate down carefully. I used to think being strong meant having more, showing more. But Ava, you're Ava, she makes strength look like stillness, like softness. I looked over at my daughter, curled up on the couch with Leia, showing her how to glue a flower onto a new drawing. "She's my teacher," I said softly. Danielle let out a shaky laugh. "Mine, too." Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out something wrapped in a soft cloth. "I have something for you," she said, placing it gently in my hands. Inside was the frame, the same one Ava had given her at brunch. But this time, it wasn't broken. The paper flower was reglued, the corner reinforced with gold foil tape. And inside the frame was the photo, me and Ava in the snow, frozen in joy. Danielle had added something, a caption, in her own handwriting, below the photo. "What love really looks like." My throat closed. I held the frame like it was sacred. "She deserves to see it up," Danielle said. "Not buried in a drawer. And you deserve to know someone saw it for what it was." I didn't cry, but I wanted to. Instead, I smiled.
Small.
Steady. The kind of smile that says we're healing. That night, when we got home, Ava didn't ask for cartoons. She just walked over to the wall and cleared a space. I placed the frame beside her heart, her watercolor, and the drawing of the bird with the Band-Aid. The wall looked more complete, not because it was perfect, but because it now included something once broken, now restored. And for the first time in a long time, I believed what Ava had always known. Some things don't lose their value when cracked. They shine even more when someone takes the time to mend them. It started with a phone call from the school counselor. She left a message on my lunch break, her voice calm but laced with something I couldn't quite place. "Hi, this is Ms. Carter from Pine Grove Elementary. Nothing urgent, I promise. I just wanted to talk to you about Ava and something wonderful she's been part of. If you could give me a call back, I'd love to share." Wonderful? I'd never received that kind of message before. Usually when schools called, it was to inform me of missed forms, upcoming fundraisers, or flu season updates. I called back between shifts, half expecting a correction. But Ms. Carter sounded genuinely excited. "I know this might sound strange," she began, "but Ava has started something here. Something kind of beautiful." I furrowed my brow. "I'm listening." She explained that a few weeks ago, around the time of that brunch, Ava had told her class about the story wall. She'd brought in a copy of the photo of us in the snow and told the story behind the frame during Share Circle. She didn't frame it like a sad thing, Ms. Carter said. She talked about how the frame got broken and fixed again, and how it still holds the best picture in the world. My hand stilled on the coffee pot. She told the other kids they could start their own story walls. That it's not about showing off, it's about remembering the small things that matter. Apparently, something stuck. Over the next 2 weeks, more than half the class had started their own versions. Some used poster board, some kept scrapbooks, others turned notebook pages into memory maps. The school counselor said she hadn't seen anything like it. "They're calling it the Ava Project," she added with a soft laugh. One of the 5th graders even made a sign for the hallway, "Your story matters, even if it's small." It's taped next to the lunchroom now. I was speechless. Then came the real reason for the call. "We'd love it if you and Ava could come to the school assembly next Friday. We're honoring students who've made a positive impact this semester," and Ava's name came up, over and over again. My chest tightened. She doesn't even know this is happening, does she?
No.
We want it to be a surprise. Just a small moment, but meaningful. Small? I wanted to laugh. Ava didn't even know she'd started a movement. That Friday, I let her pick her outfit. She chose her favorite sweater, the one with the stitched sunflowers, and the same purple glitter sneakers she'd insisted on keeping even after they got a hole near the toe. They still make me feel fast, she told me. The auditorium was packed with parents, students, and staff. The stage was simple, just a row of folding chairs and a podium with a pine tree logo on the front. A projection screen showed a slideshow of student art, math awards, and science fair ribbons. I sat near the back, fidgeting with the hem of my coat. Ava leaned against my side. "Why is everyone here?" "End of semester celebration," I said. She shrugged. "Hope there's juice." The principal gave a speech about kindness, about community, about how character matters more than grades sometimes. Then came a series of awards: Most Improved, Best Team Player, Outstanding Effort. Ava clapped politely for each one. And then Ms. Carter stepped up to the microphone. "We have one more recognition this morning," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "This award isn't for grades or sports or perfect attendance. It's for quiet impact, for reminding others that their stories matter, for showing that sometimes the biggest change comes from the smallest voice." She smiled. "And today, we want to honor someone who reminded all of us how important it is to see each other." The screen behind her lit up, and there it was. Our photo. Me and Ava in the snow. The very one in the frame. Still slightly crooked. Still absolutely perfect. The caption underneath read, "What love really looks like." Ava froze. Her hand gripped mine. "Wait," she whispered. "That's us." Then, "Mom, that's me." The auditorium had gone silent. "Ava Thomas," Ms. Carter said gently, "would you come up here, please?" She looked at me, eyes wide. "Do I have to?" "You don't have to do anything, baby. But you deserve this." She stood. She walked slow, shoulders square, steps quiet, but steady. And when she reached the stage, Ms. Carter knelt beside her with a small certificate and a handcrafted pin made by the art class, tiny paper hearts woven into a sunflower. Ava took the mic, just briefly. She looked out at the crowd, cleared her throat, and said, "You don't need to be loud to make a story. You just need to remember it." The applause that followed wasn't explosive. It was steady, respectful,
Moved.
It wasn't the sound of clapping for a student. It was the sound of people waking up. As she walked back toward me, certificate in hand, every student she passed reached out to high-five her. Even the older ones. Even the ones who never noticed her before. I knelt as she returned to her seat. "Did I do okay?" she asked. "You did perfect," I said, brushing a tear from my cheek. "You reminded everyone what matters." She tucked her certificate into her backpack without fanfare, then whispered, "Do you think Miles will want to add this to his wall?" I smiled, because that's who Ava is. Even in her own moment, she's thinking about someone else's. It started with a knock on our apartment door 3 days after the assembly. I was already in my robe, winding down with tea and soft music playing from the Bluetooth speaker Ava won in a school raffle. She was sprawled on the floor with her markers, drawing yet another page for the story wall. When I opened the door, a woman stood there holding a leather bag and a clipboard. Mid-30s, sleek blouse, press-on smile. "Hi there. I'm Elise Martin with Everyday Heroes Weekly. I hope I'm not intruding." My spine straightened. She stepped forward slightly, as if the hallway itself were an invitation. "We saw the video clip from Ava's school. It's making the rounds online. Someone posted it from the back row." That moment, when she said, "You don't need to be loud to make a story," it's gone viral. I blinked. "I'm sorry," I said. "What do you mean viral?" She opened her bag and pulled out a tablet. A thumbnail showed Ava at the microphone, our photo on the screen behind her. It had 2.1 million views. "I came to ask if you and Ava would be willing to do a feature story. We'd come here, take some photos, get some quotes, talk about your life, your wall, how Ava started this movement. We think it could be really powerful." I looked past her to Ava, still coloring on the floor, oblivious to the fact that the world had somehow found her. I stepped outside and gently closed the door behind me. "I appreciate the interest," I said carefully. "But Ava's just a kid. She didn't do any of this for attention. Elise softened. I get that. And we want to be respectful. But people need stories like hers. Real ones. Especially now. We could even coordinate with a sponsor. We have contacts at a craft supply chain that would donate materials for classrooms to start their own story walls. I paused. That part felt different. It wouldn't just be about her, Elise continued. It would be about all the kids she's inspired. The ripples. The healing. The message that small love is still love. I told her I'd think about it. She handed me a card. There's no rush, but the next print cycle's in 2 weeks. We'd love to run it on the front page. After she left, I stood in the hallway staring at the card. For the first time in months, I felt uncertain, not about Ava, but about how much of her story belonged to her and how much the world might try to take. That night, I tucked her into bed and sat beside her longer than usual. Do you know how many people watched your school speech? I asked. She shook her head, eyes half-lidded from sleep. Over 2 million. She blinked. That's a lot of people. Yep. She turned toward me under the blanket. Are they going to come here? Some might want to. Do they get to see the wall? Only if we say yes. She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, what if they only look at the shiny parts and not the cracks? I froze. What do you mean?
She yawned.
Sometimes people only like things after they look perfect. But the wall has bent corners. And bad spelling. And that one picture where I messed up the face. I like those parts best. And there it was. The line I'd been waiting for. The moment that anchored everything. She didn't want to be a symbol. She just wanted to be seen as whole. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. I promise we won't let anyone take away the parts that matter. But even as I said it, I felt the pull. The next day, I brought it up to Danielle while we had coffee on her porch. She'd started texting every other day since the dinner. Not overbearing. Just present. They want to do a story on Ava, I said. Big audience. Maybe donations for the school. She tapped her mug. And what's holding you back? I stared into my coffee. She didn't ask for any of this. She just did what felt right. I don't want them to twist it into something marketable. Danielle nodded slowly. Then tell the story your way. I looked at her. You've already done the hardest part, she said. You raised a child who can hold dignity in both hands and hand it to others. If people want to learn from her, let them. But do it on your terms, not theirs. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote an email. No to the magazine spread. Yes to the donation idea. No to a front-page photo shoot. Yes to letting Ava help write a small letter to be posted at the school about the story wall. No edits. I clicked send before I could second-guess myself. 2 days later, Ms. Carter read Ava's letter at morning announcements. If you want to make a wall like mine, you can. But you don't need glue or glitter. You just need love and a good reason to remember. That day, 5 more students made memory books. A teacher stapled her own to the door of her classroom. And back home, Ava added a new note to the wall. It read, "Even when the world looks, we get to choose what we show." And we did. Spring arrived without asking. One day the air still bit at your skin, and the next, the sun warmed your back like it remembered something about you. Ava had started walking home from school on her own, with 3 other kids trailing behind her like ducklings. Leia was one of them now. Sometimes they'd stop at the corner bodega for lollipops. Sometimes they'd collect leaves to press between notebook pages. Always, they'd end up on the living room floor, adding something new to the wall. I never told them to. They just did. That was the magic of Ava. She never demanded to be followed. She simply went first, and others found themselves moving in the same direction. Our living room wall now stretched halfway around the room. It was cluttered and uneven and slightly sagging in the middle. It was perfect. That afternoon, while Ava was at a playdate, I sat alone in the apartment, sunlight streaking across the carpet, dust motes floating like little galaxies. I poured a cup of tea and stood before the wall, letting my eyes skim over it. Some pieces were barely holding on, taped corners curling from humidity. One note had faded so much, I could only make out the word, always. There was a birthday card from Leia taped beside a child's drawing of a mountain that looked suspiciously like a triangle. A thank you note from Miles, written in pencil on the back of a cafeteria menu. A quote scrawled by a teacher in Ava's crooked handwriting. Strong people are quiet sometimes. Each piece was small. Insignificant, maybe, to the outside world. But together, they were a monument. Not to us being extraordinary, but to us being enough. As I stood there, I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't the sharp kind, not urgent or official. Just 3 soft raps like someone asking permission before speaking. I opened it to find Mrs. Langley, our oldest neighbor, leaning slightly on her cane. She wore a cardigan over her shoulders and clutched a plastic grocery bag. "I brought something," she said, lifting the bag. I let her in, moved a chair closer to the wall. She sat slowly, knees cracking, eyes squinting to scan the paper pieces and glittery stars.
"I saw that video," she said.
"Your girl's a wonder." "She is." She reached into the bag and pulled out a small frame, not handmade, but worn, the wood faded, the corners chipped. Inside was a photo of a much younger Mrs. Langley, holding a little boy. "This is my grandson," she said. "I helped raise him after my daughter passed. He lives in Ohio now. Married. Got kids of his own." I looked closer. The boy's face was full of light. The woman beside him wore the same crooked smile Mrs. Langley still carried. "I used to keep this on my dresser," she said. "But lately I think it belongs somewhere people remember things." She nodded toward the wall. "You sure?" I asked, stunned. She nodded. "I think your daughter would understand." I made space beside Ava's snow photo, the one that started it all, and pinned it up. Mrs. Langley leaned back, satisfied. "Now it's a real wall." I smiled, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. It always was. She didn't stay long. Just enough time for her tea to cool and her story to settle. After she left, I stood alone again in front of the growing collage of ordinary miracles. Ava came home 20 minutes later. She dropped her backpack, kicked off her shoes, and walked straight over to the wall. She saw the new photo immediately. "Who's this?" she asked, pointing. "Mrs. Langley and her grandson." Ava nodded slowly. "I like that he's smiling. You can tell they're close." Then she added a note beneath it without asking. "He came from love." That night, we sat on the couch wrapped in one blanket, watching the light fade through the window. Outside, the city was quiet. The world was still moving, noisily, frantically, but in here, it had slowed. "I like the window at this time," Ava said. "It makes the dust look like stars." I smiled. "You always see the good things." She shook her head, eyes still on the specks dancing in the air.
"No."
"I just don't look away." And there it was. The last line. The lesson. The gift she gave without even knowing she was giving it. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be loud. We don't even have to be ready. We just have to not look away from the things that matter. Because when we pay attention, when we really see each other, we build walls that hold more than memories. We build homes. We build hearts. We build legacies too quiet to be headlines, but too strong to be ignored. So if you're watching this, wherever you are, and you've ever wondered if your small story matters, it does. Even if no one claps. Even if no one notices right away. Because the people who love you are watching. And they don't need glitter or headlines or magazine covers. They just need a window. And someone who doesn't look away.